I might just go and grab my iPad just on the off chance that we need.
Yeah, no worries. We are just making sure that Arion has all the bits he needs. So he's going to be back in a minute. And while he does that, I am going to share this little baby.
Okay, we're
You're
live.
back.
Awesome.
We are live. Hello and welcome to the Hedonistic Way at Midday Show. I am Renee Main, and this man is no novice to darkness. He only sees it as light. He sees it as the same thing. He is a warrior for love. He's unafraid to fight with it, to be with it, to honor it, and to make love to it. And not only does he see it as a fight, he knows that there's no fight that is ever needed. He is an absolutely unbridled, unlimited potential. His uninhibited state of consciousness and ecstasy. He has nothing to find, seek, or chase, but everything to allow, surrender, and open up into. He is on a mission to teach us how to love and how to teach and activate that warrior within, to remember that we are love, and show us how to create from that space. He is a little bit delish and a whole lot of wise, humble, and strength. I welcome to the show, Arion Light. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you, darling. That was a delicious feast of an intro. I like it. I'm looking forward to exploring today with you.
Yeah, me too. Me too. You know, we were just talking about how, you know, like you've been in my field for such a long time, and it's really nice to connect here with you. I want to ask you, like, I get the feeling just from what you were saying. Okay, so there's two questions that I want to ask. All right, so let me ask you about the river. I feel your connection to the river. I want to ask you why. What's that about, and how does it make it feel? How is that connection so alive in you, and is it symbolic of anything?
Wow. Oh, wow. We could do the whole interview just on my love for the river. So I live on the Yarra River, which is the Birrarung River, and she is my mentor, my guru, my teacher, my lover, my friend. I have been living on her different points along the river for the last 15 years, as well as have a history going back longer than that. And yeah, there's a real lived experience of life on the river. Like when I walk on the river, I remember having my little boy in my arms there. I remember marrying my wife at the end of, we got married on the river, and at the end of our ceremony, we went on a raft and went off down the river, you know, and then when she got sick, we would sit by the river and she would sing songs and I would hold her in my arms as she was dying, you know, and then when she died, we scattered her ashes in the river, and there's just this history of life there for me. When I remember I was in a men's circle and they carried me into the river after my wife had passed, singing songs to me and offering their commitment to help me and my son, you know. So the river it has all this memory to it, and then it has just this friendship element, you know, like a really good friend when you hang out with them and you just come back to who you are. It's like I can be in my head or stressing about something or full of myself. I've just run a program and everyone's lives are transformed. It's like I'm amazing. And then I just come and sit by the river and it's just like, oh, that's right. So yeah, she's a very dear friend of mine, I think is the best way to describe it. Yeah. And I also do a whole lot of my work from there. I run programs from there. I do live videos from my river walks in the morning. I have two beautiful dogs, and so it's become part of, it doesn't surprise me you're asking me about it. It's become part of what people understand my work is now, and that the heart of my work is a practice called the river breath, which is about learning to welcome everything in and we let everything go, like, you know, as the
Yeah.
river keeps teaching me to. Mm.
I love that. And that's something like that's a flavor that I really get from you. And I would like to ask you about that, is because, like, for me, that connection with you is like the, you know, the river, it can be like a force to be reckoned with. It can be this calm thing, it can be still, you know. And so when I feel that and when I think about that, I think about you because you represent that, right? So you mentioned the men's circles and that and the power that can, you know, the empowerment that has and how that makes you feel. And so you have this like strong, earthy, primal energy about you, this masculine energy, but you also really have this really soft, you know, this other beautiful, this humble energy as well. So I want to ask you about like the dance between those two things. And like I can imagine, like, well, I can only imagine, I'm curious as to like what's been your dance with this soft and gentle side and then this masculine, this warrior. So yeah, I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, you do ask juicy questions. You said you can promise that. I think for me, yeah, that my passion is about becoming a river, and that means that rather than having an identity and a set of ideas and values about the person I'm trying to be, and then trying to be that person in the world, which is what, you know, there's a way of seeing the human being, which is, you know, we have a set of values, and that we make decisions and we live according to those values, and you know, if we honor those values, we live a good life. If we don't, we live, you know, that's a way of perceiving human. It's not untrue for me, but there's this deeper way for me, which is this embodied connection to my soul or my spirit or the silent, whatever I call it, my essence, that thing. And that my passion, my personal passion, and what I train in all my programs is becoming that so fully that there's no rules about who you're allowed to be or not allowed to be. Yeah. So that and so in terms of like a softness or a fierceness, and there's also a craziness to me. I was a circus clown. I've got this really bonkers part of me, and for a long time I tried to work out how do they fit, like how does the clown fit with, like you said, there's this really quiet, just leave me alone, I want to sit in the forest part of me. There's like a wild, like, you know, 50 100 men, shirts off, roaring, banging, calling themselves to life. You know, there's a real part of me that really believes in love and acceptance, and there's a part that calls bullshit. There's all these different parts to me, and for a long time I was trying to work out what I was, because they didn't necessarily fit. And then at a point I just went, and very much through the death of my wife, where I stopped trying to put myself together, and I just gave myself permission to not make sense, you know, to myself or to my audience. You know, that the whole thing about you're meant to have a brand and have that one message consistent. And I just, again, that was for me, that was a real cage. It was like, no, I'm just life itself expressing itself, and I give myself permission to be a scared little boy who doesn't know what he's doing. I give myself to be a warrior of love who's training people to rise over the planet and make a difference. And if either of them rise, my personal training is to welcome the scared boy as fully as I would welcome the warrior of love, as I would welcome the funny dude, as I would welcome the insecure dude, as well as the passion, you know, just so I think that's the simplest way to describe it, is that I practice the art of being nobody, so that whatever's here can rise up without how does that fit, or what have I got to do with that? And it means I'm constantly surprised by myself, which is quite and you know, and I guess the deeper heart of that is that when I train and work with people, I often work with a lot of sort of entrepreneurial, recovering entrepreneurs who come with this sense of you're meant to find your soul mission, and you've got to package yourself up and go and take action. You've got to be this person. And I feel like while I'm up for making a difference, that trying to be a you know, package yourself up, which is really common in this the modern sort of self-help, personal development, entrepreneurial industry. And I think we're a bit wilder than that. I don't think we're quite so, as I'm sure with you know, what you're up to. So I think that sense of really finding our unique current that is free to flow however it wants to is something that really excites me, delights me. So
Yeah, I think that's so important. And, I love that you speak to that. You spoke about being a clown and that playfulness, because I don't like, I've been in business now for 15 years, and I can't tell you like the struggle that I faced when I had to feel like that I had to be a certain person. Like a business person does this and they act like this and they dress like this and they don't say this, and it's just it always felt like I was so like a bra that like a really ill-fitting bra, like shoes that don't fit, because it's like you just feel like you just want to rebel against all of it, and I think that rebellion is really alive, right now. And I'd love to ask you about that actually, is because I feel like this rebellion is really alive. And if like the last 18 months has taught us anything, I really feel like people are beginning to reevaluate. I can't tell you how many people that have asked me, like, where do I start, like with this self-improvement, this self-development, this exploration about what is true for me. And so I'd really love to ask you, what have you got to say to that in terms of how do people begin this process to be okay with all shades of who they are, and begin to like really stand up and be the warrior for love? Like, how do they begin that process?
How do they begin? I mean, I think really what begins any of our journeys to a deeper inquiry is dissatisfaction a lot of the time. It's that I'm not satisfied with what other people are telling me or with my own experiences. It's like something's not right. And sometimes that's a very overt, I get a lot of people who've fulfilled their dreams. They come in and they've reached the pinnacle of their career or they've got everything and it's like something's not right. And so there's a sense that there's something more. And that can come, more on a spiritual level, where a sense of, I think there's more out there, or it can come on a real, just a personality level of like, I'm not happy, so I think it really begins with that, that dissatisfaction. And then it's a willingness to step into the unknown, and for me, I understand that sense of like the ego or the identity, that part of us that lives in the known, and it just takes what it learned and then we just live inside that and we just repeat it and call it a life. And at a certain point that the known cracks, whether in my case it was a lot to do with my wife getting sick. I had a nice little new age set of ideas. Here I am, this is who I am. And then terminal cancer came along and just shattered my little bubble. And that opened me up. So I think it's to really learn to find that passion for all of us is to be able to be unknown. Because if there's a bit of me that's rising who's scared, if there's a little bit of me going, actually I'm scared, and I've got a value system of no, I'm a powerful entrepreneur and I'm living my dreams, and then the scared boy goes, actually I'm really terrified, and I go, no you're not, whack him on the head with the empowerment stick and put on my empowerment mask, then I miss out on the incredible gift of him and what he is here to teach me. So if I can be comfortable with the unknown, then I don't need to hide bits of me and put other bits of me forward. I can just sit in, I'm everything and I'm nothing. I'm really wise and powerful and I'm a fucked up weird loser. And if both of them are okay, then we can relax, and then we can start to actually ask the questions about what do I really want and what's and because we're not scared of the answers, because it's okay, we're going to die weird losers, so we may as well enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. I was pondering yesterday, just, about, I feel like sometimes like we know, but we forget just how temporary this life is, and when you think about it, you think, oh my goodness, how much time, energy and space has been consumed by trying to be someone that you're not, or trying to fit into these baskets, or, can I say this? Can I not say this? It's just, and, and I feel like, what you're saying, about your wife is and I feel like that's what death does, right? Is, is it just shatters like the idea of forever, and all the beliefs about, we think that we've got some control over life, but we actually have absolutely no control over it.
Yeah. I mean, death is such a, like, whether that's actual death of someone we love or the loss of a dream, it's like it cracks us, hey, and if we can go be cracked by it, we find, I remember my wife just weeks before she died just saying, I found this love that cannot die, and it was like this sense of what's really real, and I feel like death goes rah, and all these things that aren't real go wow and run away, and like, what's really real, which is the moment, which is what's here right now, is this moment of me and you having an interview, this moment of walking on the river watching the clouds change shape. It's this, like, whatever's being lived now is where life is, and so I feel like death is a great mentor.
Yeah, absolutely it is. I feel like it just cracks us all open, and that's I watched Mum when she passed of cancer as well, and in the beginning it was like this fight. And then I really love what you said there when you speak to your wife, is you find this love, right? And that's in watching this person who carried so much hate and suppressed anger for so much of her life. And then just in 6 weeks, I just watched it all dissolve. And it was just the most incredible experience, and my dance with that as well, with trying to control that, and then, standing back and hang on a minute, like, it's actually, I've got nothing to do here, but hold her in love and with love as well. So I really love what you speak to there. I want to ask you about masculinity, and what do I want to say? Like, I get really annoyed about about how a lot of people in the spiritual industry speak about the masculine. And it's this whole talk of like the masculine is crumbling, and it's da 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 da, and the confusion that we have around attaching the masculine to men, but also like what the masculine is and what people perceive it to be. So I feel like the masculine like gets like in this basket of the patriarch and men and masculine, like they're all the same thing. And I really, I feel like there's a lot of work that we need to do around really understanding and getting to know our own masculine and that beautiful sacred sense of worship that I just love. What has been your experience with the masculine? And let's just start there.
I love you ask these questions that feel like their whole world's one question, so it's good, it's juicy.
I know, it's 5 billion questions in one. I know.
Totally. I love it. So look, I think, I'll just go what you said. For me, there's two very separate things. There's man, or someone who identifies as man, and the journey of the role of man in culture and the understanding of that. And then there's this spiritual principle of masculine and feminine, which is these two different types of energies that live inside all of us. And I think, like you said, they're all collapsed. I used to do a lot of masculine, feminine, feminine work. I don't do it now because I'm just, it's just too weird. It's too, and that the more that the LGBTI community is cracking our paradigms around that, then the more it's just like the binary nature of those things doesn't really work in any sort of definitional sense. Now, I work with yin yang, or what in warrior work we call lotus and sword, and this sense of the receptivity and the directivity. And that for me, they're energies that are really understandable, that don't have to be associated to genitals or, patriarchy. They're the flow of life. They're the river, and I do feel like I've seen incredible value in learning the two of them and learning how they dance. So learning to surrender fully is an incredibly beautiful thing for man, woman, or any gender, that as part of that. And, that's traditionally taught in, tantric circles, like the woman or the feminine is meant to surrender and all of that bullshit. It's just, for me, it's just utter bullshit. Anything that's prescribed to a gender is just, it can't be true, because clearly we're all unique. But the principle of surrender as a great truth for me is it carries very deep resonance, you know, and like we're talking about with death comes in and says, holds us, can we surrender, you know, and so too the sort of what I would call the opposite principle of surrender, of choice, of you know, our own will is also an incredibly powerful thing to remember, you know, that I have choice here. I don't just have to surrender and trust. I can fucking change things, you know, and I can, if things aren't the way that I can, and whether that's on a personal level or whether that's on a cultural level or society level, that I have power to say no and to say yes. And that's an incredibly beautiful part of us. And for me, that dance of the two of them is integral to everything that I'm passionate about, you know, and not, to learn to make our peace with both of them. You know, one's the roots, one's the branches, and learn to put one foot in each and really, you know, live from there. So that's my take on masculine, feminine, you know. But then on men, I've been involved in men's work for years. I've been involved in Menergy, which is Australia's largest men's gathering. I was like a core founding member of that, and we've, you know, I've run thousands of hours of work just for men, and I love men, you know, and I feel like that men collectively, I'm very much talking collectively here, you know, there's a crossroads, there's a real calling of what is the role of man now, that, you know, that man is being, and please, I hope everyone listening to this really gets that I'm talking very generally here, but that man is, you know, as woman has risen more and said, I don't just want to be the passive and the housewife and the in that repressed, and thank God that as woman, and included in that is just diversity, you know, as you know, a dominant cultural paradigm is being challenged, that is, you know, it's liberation, it's growth, but for a lot of men it's like, well, what is my role now, you know, what is man if I'm not, you know, I look to my father, I look to my grandfather, and I don't see a man who could survive in today's society, or a man I want to be. And then men, you know, have to ask questions of who am I now, what is my role in this world now? And you know, spiritual things will talk about being a man who's in touch with his feelings, and entrepreneurial will say you've got to have a vision and go for it. And I've just got a lot of room in my heart for men to go on that journey, you know, and there's a lot of men who are a lot hurt and doing stupid things to themselves, to each other, to partners. Like there's a lot of pain in men, and my take on that is really around, you know, creating spaces where men can reflect, can grow. You know, I don't work with men at the cutting edge of, you know, domestic violence. I work much more with the privileged men in lots of ways, who've got time and got space to explore themselves and to ask questions about, why am I so angry, or why am I attracted to all these people, or what is my mission? And there's a real place for me in men's work, in men coming together to do that, not as an answer, as like the only thing, but you know, sitting there watching 200 men come together, and, you know, men who've never done that before, and share, oh my God, I feel safe to share, and, you know, really explore really personal issues as well as societal issues. So I don't do a lot of men's work anymore, but I really believe we need to create a lot of space for men to come and do the work to find who they are now, you know, and that's true for all of us really, but definitely, and I've watched men do that, and it's an incredibly beautiful thing when a man realizes that his power is not something to be ashamed of, it's how he uses it, you know, his sexuality is not something to be ashamed of, it's how he uses it, you know, and also that whole, you know, thing that we started the conversation even before we had, you know, started press record, about the different parts of us, you know, and that any fixed role in society for women or for men traps us, because we're wild, we're mysterious, we're you know, we're hetero, we're bi, we're, you know, we're everything and everything if, as a whole bunch, and so any one thing is just not going to fit, and so there's a lot of pulling down of the old, and I think we just need a lot of space to hold for all of us to go, well, what am I? What do I really want? What's actually true for me? You know, and I think that's where my passion is, finding that uniqueness.
I love that. I'm curious to ask, because, you know, I feel like we're in such a poignant time right now. How do we hold and create space for this new human. Like, I feel like there's a transitional period that's going to have to happen. It's like, it's basically like we work this shit out, right? Like, so how, for those of us who are, and probably, there's so many of us, going through this time of transition, like, how do we hold that space? What do we do to allow space for this new human to present itself to us?
My short answer is I don't know, because like I work so individually these days. I work with whoever I'm working with, and that any one answer, like yeah, I'll sit in my coaching chair or whatever, and that what will be really true for one person will be total surrender. It's like, just let go of all your external roles. Stop trying to be a someone. Stop trying to fight. Stop trying to save everyone. Come home, and that will be really true for them. And the next person sits in the chair, and it's like, fuck yeah, come on, go out and chain yourself to that tree or fight for that value. And so I really think it is a very unique thing. But I'll give you my best answer to it, which I haven't worked out yet, but it was given to me by my wife around the time she passed. And because it talks to the same thing, that I remember sitting there, and she was weeks away from passing, and we'd entered into this incredible state of bliss. Like I said, she'd found this, what she called the love that cannot die. And we were both in the closest I've ever been to anything resembling enlightenment, just incredible love and beauty and connection between us, between the family, a trust in life, crying every day, like heartbreak, grief moving through us so fully. And I remember just really feeling the sort of this truth that life was so beautiful, like each moment was so beautiful. And also I was present to, life is so cruel, so unbearably cruel. Here's a loving, beautiful woman who's not getting to live her dreams, who's going to leave behind her son. Here's a young boy who's losing his mum at 2. Like, life is, and then, put that out on a cultural level, there's children dying of hunger. Like, this life is so cruel. And I felt like I was really sitting with those two truths and going, I don't, like, I can look at the beauty and go, yeah, that's true. Life is stunningly beautiful. And I can look at the cruelty and go, that's really true too. And I didn't know. And so I took them to her and shared that. And she said, she was in a very luminous place. And she said, put one foot in the beauty and put one foot in the pain, and do not move. And live from there. Let life arise from there. And at the time I had one of those, like, but 12 years later, I'm still doing that. I still feel like this sense of, like, what I understand that to mean now, and I'll probably have a different understanding in a year, but is that sense that, good and bad, right and wrong, surrender and control, there's these different things, internal work versus external activism, all, like, on a very daily level, like, do I lie in the bed and surrender and relax, or do I get up and go to the gym? Like, there's this sense of, and we can get split in that, and we polarize, and we try and get towards the good stuff and away from the bad stuff, and we have a vision board, and there's the person I'm meant to be, or we have a spiritual sort of version of, I'm going to be all fucking one with the universe or something, or we have a hedonistic view, I'm just going to have as much pleasure as I can, like, whatever our different worldview is. And then that becomes who we should be. And then there's this life that occurs that doesn't fit with that, and we suffer. And so how I'm interpreting her words, and I reckon I'm like, on my deathbed, I'll finally get it. But that is to be able to really be with the dual nature and not let it run us, to be with the part of us that is scared and vulnerable, and not seek to fix him or heal him or her or they. And also be with the bit of us that's magnificent and powerful and got visions and dreams, but not seek to just chase that and and if we can stand still enough and be honest enough with all that we are, the gloriousness and the horrendousness, on a personal level and on a global level, I feel like a different path emerges that's not about getting away from the bad and towards the good, but is somehow incorporates the cruelty and the pain of life with the exquisite beauty. And that's sort of my spiritual practice now, is trying to work out live those words that she shared.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I absolutely resonate with that. And that's, it's such a beautiful space to be. it's also, you know, like it's this rewiring, isn't it? You know, like we're so ingrained to like chase the good, dismiss the bad, like override it. And, you know, and that's, I say, you know, to my interns all the time, like, you know, our bodies know, like we know, like we can't face or fork. We fuck with the universe, you know, like it's just, we can't force our feeling states, and that acceptance, which you speak to, I think is really beautiful. If someone's watching and they're going, okay, like to live this life, and they're feeling this duality right now, and you know, they're feeling this pain, this very real pain, and feeling like that they've got no control, you know, what is your work in this world? Because I hear, like, because I've seen you, I've got like 50,000 threads coming into my awareness right now, so I'm trying to break them down into something that even makes a little bit of sense. You know, so how can they begin this path? I've noticed that, like, you being of service in the past couple of months, like, you know, it's you haven't been you haven't been spruiking opinions, but you've been making a conscious choice to really be of service. So I want to ask you, you know, because I really honor that. And so what has been your path in that, and how have you come back to that place of like actually being of service in a really unique way during a time when the world is feeling so much pain right now?
Yeah, you're really speaking something very dear to my heart there, that, you know, I have a spiritual mentor of 30 years, and she lives out in the bush. She's never charged money for anything she does, and for 30 years has people come all over the world, has incredible things happen there, and yet has never ever promoted it, never, you know, she's in her 80s now, and my spiritual mother in lots of ways. And you know, Jesus was her inspiration, not Jesus in a religious sense, but Jesus as a being of love sense. And she would say, you know, if someone come to me and said, Jesus, can you help me? Would he say yes, as long as you could pay me $100? You know, as she said, I'd just never be that. So I can't charge because I want to live in Jesus's name, you know. And if people are watching, please know that this is not about to go into any sort of religious spiel. It's not at all about religion or following a set of rules. It's about being as love. You know, it's living as love. It could just as easily be George or Harry or Bill or, you know, anyone that represents love. And so she instilled in me, and as well as, you know, my parents, who are very deeply generous people, this incredible beauty of generosity. And I've felt that a lot. And I've, you know, in my work, I'm very generous. And in programs, people say, wow, you over deliver. And that's been a long running thing for me. But at the same time, I've really got bought into this sense of my industry, that the personal development, entrepreneurial industry. And, you know, you package up a product, you do a launch, you sell that product, and there's a way of working that I have bought into, and you know, made hundreds of thousands of dollars doing that, and made an incredible impact to a lot of people's lives. But what's happening to me in the last year is I'm realizing that what I call business consciousness is really not true for me, which is packaging up, you know, that my business model is generosity. You know, the truth of how I want to share my work with the world is generosity. And I'm very much in a transition of surrendering my whole life to that generosity at the moment. So really recognizing that I'm going to trust that flow. You know, I've written 6 books. I've created, you know, 8, 9, 10, 11 days of meditations and audios continuously back to back, like just huge library and we're basically looking at how I can best share huge amount of it for free, you know, to just give it away. And I do feel like it's personally really true for me. It's a personal calling, but I also feel like at this time, as you shared, that with all the different things that are going on, and this is probably true at any time in history, but that generosity is a state of being that clearly is part of the solution. You know, I don't pretend to have a model for here's how all of us humans can work together. I'm way past any sort of belief that I have the answer for the great mystery of humanity. And even I have one sort of model of this is where we're going, or this is the spiritual evolution we're in. I feel like it's each moment is a chance for each person to choose. I don't necessarily feel like there is the one anything, but I do feel like generosity is like this. It's been called for, it's been called for from me to break through business models and the capitalistic model, which again, I'm not here to bash capitalism, but that notion of I will give if you give me something back, and that the purpose of life is to use my skills to get as much as I can while giving so that I can get more. And I feel like there's a real evolutionary impulse at the moment to really say yes to generosity as the foundation for how we live, how we communicate, how we run businesses, how we, and we know that in families. We know that on a personal level, that a healthy family is when, not people aren't living in exchange and going, I'll give you this if you give me this. It's a flow of love. And I think that's, I want to live that way in business and live that way in how I serve. So that's that. And you also mentioned just about pain and about what to do for people that are in pain, and again, it's a very unique, but I think it's really, I work with a lot of people, and I work with a lot of people who work with a lot of people in pain. So I work with psychologists in hospitals, I work with nurses, I work with, all sorts of different types of people who, more so than I tend to work. I don't have a lot of people in really intense pain in my work. I tend to work with leaders and people who are really, not as suffering as much as that people at the coalface of, inequality and, all of those different elements. And I'm very privileged and stored away in my little forest shack away from a lot of that. But I serve those people who are at the coalface of a lot of pain, a lot of suffering on all sorts of different levels of our society. And so I think two things. So if you are one of those leaders first, I feel like I just want to bow to you and say, please rise and serve. If you have the privilege of not being taken over by your own pain, if you have, the resources physically, emotionally, mentally, financially to not be in pain, then rise up and be a warrior of love in this world in whatever way you're to give. That's, and then if you are really in pain, and of course, we're all of it, but if you are really struggling, is that I think that the core thing, this really comes from my men's work, is about being honest, honest with those you love and reaching out, that we can't begin to do anything if we're lying. If we're really suffering and we can't tell the truth about that, then nothing can happen. The moment we say, actually, I'm really suffering, life can naturally come towards you. Just like if a friend comes over to our house and says, I'm really having a bad day, there's a natural response to, what do you need? But if that friend's locked at home and never shares that, then we have to be very intuitive to know, hey, Fred, how you going? So right. I think that honesty and asking for help is, hard, but I think it's where we have to begin, and that then grants the person you ask for help the chance to rise and become a warrior of love for you in that moment. And then who knows, in the next moment, they might be, hey, returning the favor.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, because
it's definitely a time for love to rise. I think, it's a real time for love to triumph. Like when what happened with my wife, the journey was collapse, grief, anger, suffering. I can't believe this is happening. This is not fair. What did someone else do wrong? What did I do wrong? What, all of that throughout, until we got through all of that to the most incredible calling to love, right in the face of pain and suffering. So I feel like that's my job, is to help people come through that until the very heart of their personal and individual suffering becomes a calling to rise and serve in love in whatever way is unique for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I really love that. And that honesty piece is so important, because it just provides instant relief, right? Like your nervous system automatically, like you say it out loud. And, that's what I say all the time, like to my interns, is, the whole I am statements and the empowerment, stick, as I think, as you called it earlier, is, we're trying to override emotions, but what happens if we're just really honest with ourselves, right? Like full permission to just be all of it. It provides our nervous system with so much relief, and we feel it instantly. I want to ask you about the generosity business model, and like, how does that work in terms of like the very human need of, you know, having to, you know, provide and pay bills and buy food and, you know, all of this stuff. So how does that feel with like, so, you know, I guess the line between stepping into martyrdom and just this generosity business model. So
Yeah.
what's that space there?
Another one of these questions. You said you had a gift for going for questions, right? I feel like each question you ask is really going to like a really key part of what I'm passionate about. So yeah, again, I think there's two answers to this. There's very much the internal answer for me, which is about learning to receive, you know, and I've got whole programs on. Integral part of my work and what I've helped tens of thousands of people with is our ability to receive. And that if our receptivity isn't strong, if we've got taken over by, like you said, the martyr or the pleaser or whatever, then that generosity business model of just, oh yeah, just have my things, will actually strengthen that experience of inability to receive. And therefore it's like I gave everything away and people took advantage of me, and so it'll increase that suffering until we have to pull back and go, fuck you world, and I've got taken care of myself. So I think for anything like that, the level of generosity that I'm talking about is the level of ability to receive and know that we are worthy and have done the work to be able to receive really deeply is foundational. So I don't teach people to run open contribution businesses. I don't believe it's the right way to do things. And I really don't, because I really believe there are people who are here to run very tight, you know, business ships, and that's their thing. So I'm certainly, for me, this generosity is a personal calling, not the solution for everyone. But yeah, the inner answer to that question is very much about, I have to keep noticing if am I open to receive fully? Yeah, because if I am, then life will take care of me. That's the premise. It can sound very woo-woo, but if I am trained, if I am trained to be drinking in life, then I am so abundant and so full that I could never need anything. And so that I can live in that state of gratitude and fullness, and then that creates a magnetism and creates a flow of life that means I get looked after. So what it means then is I'm not doing my work to try and get what I need. So I have a deeper flow inside myself, and I trust that, and that I follow that, and that if that says to me, give this program to this person for free or give this away free, I trust that. So it's like really trusting my deep flow, not just trusting like an imposed sort of Christian worldview of just be selfless and give away and just deny your sex and deny your needs and deny your that. It's like really being able to go, this is what I need. And I'm in an incredible relationship at the moment where I'm being so loved and ravished every day that it's like I can't help. It's just like I've got more and more to give away. So I'm in a personal place of incredible abundance. You know, I live in a beautiful place in the forest. I've been doing this work for a lot of years, and I'm a product of my own work. I'm living my dreams. I'm living very close to my true nature, and so I feel very full. So that allows me to be generous. And then on a really practical level, I just have a lot of people who've done incredible work with me and support me. So that I have programs at the deeper level of my work, where people pay thousands of dollars to coach with me, and people pay thousands of dollars to do programs and deep training with me, and happily give it away. They pay for other people to do programs and stuff because their lives are transformed, because they're, so I'm not coming at it as some, at the start of a business going, I'm not worthy, let me give my spiritual gifts away. I've done that, and then I've got frustrated with that, and I've charged again, and I've been back and forth a lot of time. But I am in a place of incredible wealth right now in myself, and so I can risk a generosity business model, because I'm supported by these long-term students, and I've got a staff team that are amazing, but and so it's also it's another practical answer of people running businesses, is that I offer a huge amount of free stuff now. I'm giving away a huge amount of free things. But if people want to step into a container with me, and it is an open contribution container, I don't just say, give whatever you want. We have a conversation. And we say, well, it's meant to hurt. If you're really committed to this, it's meant to hurt. And we get real about what amount feels right. And, so I'm very clear. I grew up in quite intense poverty, and so I'm very aware of, poverty is a very real thing, rather than just, oh, poverty is just a mindset and just think differently and you'll be able to pay the $10,000 for my program. It's just, that's just privileged nonsense, really. It just means you can only work with a certain few, and that's fine. If they're the people you're here to work with, that's fine. But if you want to make your work available to a larger audience, that sort of thinking won't cut it, So, so I think that's the heart of it. And also, because I've built so much work now, is I can offer an incredible amount of stuff for free that doesn't take too much of my time. So I've got audios and programs and meditations that I can offer for free. And if 100 people get them, but only 10 people pay for them, it's fine. So it is, that's.
I love that. I want to ask you about your union and with your partner now, because I feel your connection. I feel like it feels really juicy and it feels really nourishing. What do I want to ask you about that? I want to ask you about the transition from having your wife and experiencing that love and opening yourself up to another love, and allowing yourself to just marinate and be in and receive that love. I don't know, what have you got to share on that? What comes up for you?
My wife passed 11 years ago now. So there's a lot of learning and growth that's gone into to me since then. And I've been in this current relationship for a couple of years. I get asked a lot, how did I create it and how can I create it? And even though I teach a lot of creation work, I don't really believe in that simplistic, we create our own reality thing. I think there's a grace there. Yeah, some people are beautiful, loving places and don't create a loving relationship. Other people are actually putting out a bit of shit in their life, but actually, it's just not as simple as that. Whatever the rules of the universe are, this simple, you magnetize, it's just clearly not the only truth. Yeah, there's clearly cultural conditionings. There's things we can't see, all sorts of stuff. So,
absolutely.
I know it's not exactly the question you asked, but I can't claim to have created it or put her on my vision board and made her happen. She's way too miraculous for that. But I think probably my answer is really around the opening to receive stuff. And I've actually got an opening to receive program. If people listen to this and go, I really want to connect with that, they can access that. But I feel like I have learned over the years through the death of my wife and to really let life ravish me, to learn. I was sort of a new age. I called myself a dickless new age giver, just like that my life force was shut down and I just was here to serve and give, and I was in the light and the love. I'm just going to pour light. And through the death of my wife, and that stuff really broke, and I met my human who was horny and hungry, and and as I've woken him up and brought him in, he's able to really receive really deeply. And before my beloved came along now, I had years of training of just learning to let life love me, let it in, and I feel like it's something I'm known for. People who do work with me, it's like, wow, that, I think especially in, I don't know, just collectively, often we give more than we receive. And so there's a fundamental kink in not necessarily the good type of kink, that in the hose where our giving and our receiving don't match, and so it just puts us out of the flow of life, and then we give more to try and get it. And so I feel like, if I'm to take sort of that, your question there, and feel into it, it's really about the more we receive, the more we deeply learn to let the flow of life in, then the more life will show up, whether that's a tree or a beautiful tantric lover or money from a client. Life will show up and give to us. And so that cultivating a deeply receptive mind and a receptive body, which is sort of like the first two stages of my warrior work, is sort of integral, to the love that I now share with her.
I love that. That's so beautiful. And that's, I was saying to my partner last night is, we've been together for 22 years, and so we've navigated huge life, and 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 it's literally like I've been literally half of my life now has been spent with him. And so, you know, but every time, like, I feel like, you know, like I step into like thinking like, what do I want? Like, you know, it's thinking that he should be somewhere else, what he should be doing, you know, who he should be, what he, you know, all of these shoulds and expectations, you know, and then it's really easy to go, I don't really feel disconnected to you, you know, and so, I mean, you know, I don't feel connected to you. So, you know, but it's that navigating that to go, oh, okay, like coming back to go, I don't have to. I don't have to, like, all I have to do is let you be you, you know, and
hallelujah.
that's it. That's it. And then, you know, and then I can just, and I know this work, like I teach this work, and then, you know, I can look at it and I go, oh, wow. Like, and I look at him and I go, oh, I can begin this sense of worship again, you know, and to just let it all go. So I really love that, you know, what you speak to there. I think it's really beautiful. And it's something that I think that, you know, it's really easy to forget, but important that we come home to. Yeah.
Totally. I think when we're surviving life, we can't see what we've already got. You know, the consciousness of survival, which may be very real. Like there are a lot of us who are really surviving. Like we might not survive emotionally, financially, physically if we don't keep going. But then there's also that real psychological survival instinct, and it fundamentally doesn't stop. You know, it just keeps going and going and going, and that's, you know, people say to me, if you had 1 minute to teach what all the, you know, 20 years of working with tens of thousands of people, what would you say? And it would just be stop everything, stop all the searching, all the dreaming, all of the everything, and just stop and be here and breathe and let the past catch up with us, let the future go, and find what's here, the treasure that's here in this vulnerable, broken, beautiful human moment, you know. So yeah.
Absolutely. It's that, you know, it's holding on stops the flow, not letting it go, right?
Yeah, and chasing, you know, chasing a better version of, like you said, your partner or of yourself or of, you know,
And is that then the essence of, you know, I know that you teach leaders, and a big part of that is how to create from love. Is that the essence then of what that body of work is for you?
Yeah, well, it's part of it. So there's now I get really excited because my passion is creation, but creation born of soul and love, as opposed to vision boards and ideas and strategy. And so in the warrior work, I mentioned there's sort of like 5 stages. And so that these answer that. So the first 2 stages are about getting out of the mind and softening the body. And so we call that building a receptive mind and a receptive body. And so that's about breaking out of the cycle of identifying as thoughts and feelings as who I am and trying to get somewhere and be someone, and coming to rest. And the third step is meeting our soul, meeting, you know, our spirit, whatever we want to call it. Doesn't need to be a spiritual thing, but just silence, you know, meeting stillness, and that in that place a door opens, you know, to something greater, both on a personal level, like, oh my God, I'm not just these thoughts and feelings and conditions and roles and responsibilities. I'm, you know, whatever we find in that, the unspeakable, that thing. And so that's that descent is an integral part of my work, that coming in to come home really to who we are. But in lots of ways, where I think my greatest work is the rising up from that home into the world again. It's the return of the warrior of love, you know, it's the coming out of the cave. And there's sort of 2 steps to that, which I call an alive body. And that's when the action for me can be born from the mind telling us what we should do, the person we should be. And that is what we call laction, which is action rising from lack. Or it can be the soul overflowing so much that it can't help but express itself in the world, you know. And that's the deep training that I do. I run year-long programs and apprenticeships and all of that, and it's all on that art. And so the 4th step after connecting with the soul is the awakening of the body as a living current. Because if I think of it like a dragon, so that my body is not just flesh and bones and pleasure and orgasms and hunger and pain. It is some visceral, wild, spiritual, dynamic thing, creature. And that if this body is like a dragon and it's asleep, then when I have these visions and these things I want to create, I sort of have to drag the dragon with me, and often it will fight against me. And so that my intention, what I want, even what it feels like my soul wants for my life, and what I'm actually able to create really don't work. So the fourth step before I, train people to create incredible results in the world is awakening a body that is alive with the soul and alive with their essence. Because when that dragon is woken up, then when we move to the fifth stage, which is about ecstatic action, is about really unleashing ourselves on the world, then rather than the mind going, I've got this vision, come on, dragging it, it's like the dragon is there going, get on my back, I will fly you there. So I think, in terms of creating, there's those two steps, and that after you've connected to the soul is to wake up the body so that it's a live dragon. And then it's really around following the current into action. Because the other challenge I found is that, like I said, I work with a lot of recovering entrepreneurs, and their own visions, or they'll be at a workshop and they'll go, what's your life purpose? And it's like, okay, I want to help, young people feel empowered or something. And they get this vision and they see it. It's like so true, and it's my mission, and it's so alive. But then what happens is, without even noticing it, often this is subtle, but before long, their mind, their identity has now taken that thing that was born of their spirit, born of their soul, and turned it into a big fucking to-do list, and there's all of the different things they got to do and the strategies they got to employ, and it's like it loses its soul, and even though it's still about, at the heart, it can still be the mission their soul gave them. But before they know it, they're an identity, their thoughts and feelings trying to make this thing happen. And so the secret to interrupting that is really being able to stay in touch with that ecstatic body, and then follow it, and take some actions, and then get results, and then learn from that and come back again. And it's, now I've got a guy recently contacted me. His company's just been, granted $1 million to do this global program he's doing. And I remember the moment he first created that, and he was saying, I'm just going to be in this current, and I'm just going to follow it. And if this leads the business to be successful or it doesn't, that's not the point. I'm just going to follow this current. And here he is now being supported to make an incredible global impact, but not because he got so fucking wound up about the outcome, but because he stayed true to his current, his flow. And for me, that's the real miracle of being a warrior of love. Is it's not I make stuff happen in the world. It's I just allow love to have its way with me and do its thing through me.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. It's like less outcome, more current.
Yeah, totally. And I work with a lot of creative people. Like there's some people, there's obviously different sorts of people in the world, and there's more strategy people who that sort of system of, okay, design your 7-point launch program and complete each step, and really works for some people. But for those really sort of more crazy, wilder people, that way crushes their creativity. Whereas learning to create that way means we can create incredible results and impact in the world, but we've never had to try and be a something. You just stay in the current.
Yeah, that's amazing. I have one last question for you.
Great.
And that is, what is turning you on right now?
I'd have to say generosity. That I feel like, this is very personal to me now, that I feel like I've refound generosity in a way I knew it years ago and gave up on it, and to follow a business model. And I feel like I've really found this, just give it away, and it's like, oh, that's what the river's been saying to me. That's what the sun's been saying to me. It's what the earth, it gives of itself. And I feel like I am so ecstatically, erotically turned on by that flow of generosity. It's like, that's what I am, it's that haven't yet. I just had a meeting with my team this morning about going, what model do we create around that? What do we, that, so there's a lot of unanswered questions about it practically and
Yeah.
externally, but just
Yeah.
in me, it's like generosity is just singing through me, going, hello, you know, and I'm it's like, this is where I want to live my life from and create business from and create my wealth from. So
Yeah.
I'm in a really erotic, ecstatic relationship with generosity. I feel like it's sub, really, you know. I feel like generosity has got me and I'm its bitch, and I'm just going, take me. It feels good, you know. And I don't know where we're going, but that's the role of this sub. Is to be led, and so I'm being led by generosity, and I feel like it's taking me somewhere very, very special and very, very true.
Amazing. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I'm feeling that deeply, and I love that. So and I'd love to witness that too. So thank you for being on the show. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for doing your work in the world, for being a warrior for love, for teaching others how to create from love, and thank you for listening to The Current. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for such rich questions. Yeah, it's delicious. And I really, if people are listening to this and want to get involved, I have a free group called Warriors of Love. There's 1,000 so people in there, and we really look after people in that group. There's a whole lot of free audios on sexuality, on creating, on you know, there's video masterclasses, there's meditations, there's, you know, a good chunk of my work totally for free. So if you can put the link below to that, Warriors of Love, it's you know, these days you really can come and train with me for as long as you want and never pay a cent. Just really, you know,
amazing. I'll put all of your details in the show notes so people know exactly where and how to find you. So thank you to everyone who's tuned in, and I'll see you next week on the show. Bye, everybody.